Hey guys. Today we're talking about the 700 gallon again. We're going to be unboxing a bunch of the stuff and equipment and plants and everything that I got to be able to actually scape and finish this tank. I also want to take you through a rundown of the equipment and how everything works or is planned to work. But first I want to answer a question that you probably had. Where'd the big logo, Joey, that you put up there, the King of DIY, where is that? Put it right on the wall here. This is going to allow me to actually have, well, I needed a surface, I needed an area out here in the gallery that was going to allow me to build some tanks and other equipment and other things that I want to build. And to be honest with you, when you don't really have a place to build, you're not really motivated that much to do it. But now I have a spot, which will also double where I edit the videos, which will double as a place to do the podcast, which will double as a place for me to hang out. Because I do that a lot out here. But for right now, we're going to use it to unbox and show you everything that I just got at the pet store and that was shipped to me. I'll also mention that that wall was originally for the 40-gallon racks. I still have all those tanks. I still have all those fish. I'm just doing something else that I really want to do out here. All those tanks, all those fish aren't going anywhere. Just be patient. You'll see what's happening in the near future. I can't build everything in one day in one video type of deal, but it's all coming. Now, before we get to any of this, we'll talk about the equipment and how this tank's going to run in the first place. We'll start off by what you can see for equipment. And if you look closely, there's only two pieces of equipment you can see, and they're on the ends. These are the wave makers. On each end is an Ecotech Vortec MP60 wave maker. You guys will remember these. I got them 5 years ago. Ecotech sent me these. They're still up and working. I know they're expensive, but man, they just last forever. Each one of these can produce up to 7,500 gallons per hour in water flow. I can make it lagoonal, I can make it a wave, I can make it pulsing. I can control these however I like through their little controllers that I just put on the sides of the tank. Now, obviously, they're not going to make 7,500 gallons of water flow. I'm not going to put them at their max, but that is their max. You can dial them all the way down and all the way up using 10 to 60 watts depending on what setting you put them on. The reason I have wave makers in such a large tank and or in any aquarium, you do need water circulation for a number of reasons. Biggest one is simply algae. You'd be surprised how important water movement in a planted aquarium actually can be. I've experimented with it in the past, going with a tank that didn't have wave makers versus an identical tank, the identical setup that had wave makers, and the one with wave makers didn't have any algae. Of course, it helps with regulating temperature and circulating the aquarium water, simulating natural environments for the fish, etc. There's a ton of reasons to have good water circulation in your aquarium. But since we will be dosing this with CO2, which we'll get to in a minute, the likelihood of me putting these up all the way or having them near the surface and creating any sort of surface agitation, which is only going to aid in gas exchange, CO2 gassing off, replacing with oxygen, is very slim. Whether or not we add CO2 is another story. We'll just cover that right now. I have two 10-pound tanks of CO2. I got to get them filled up, and I'll most likely have to do it next week if we end up adding them to this tank at all. I want to see what it's going to be like without CO2 first, because we do have relatively low light plants that are relatively easy to keep, and we don't necessarily need the CO2, but if I don't like how fast they're growing, we'll turbocharge this tank. And when you want to turbocharge a planted aquarium, a lot of the times you just put CO2 on it and it just goes nuts. But then the topic from CO2's got to go to lighting. These lights used to be on the 2000. I believe these are called the Radeon GH4s. They don't make them anymore, and they never did make them in freshwater, but Ecotech made these for me specifically. They are a saltwater light, but they switched out all the LEDs and made them freshwater. I've tried these on the 375, grew the plants amazing, did it on 2000, same thing. So it's not going to have any problems whatsoever lighting up the 700. Mind you, these are on 20% strength right now. And look at the tank. It's lit up. It might even be 15%. I can't remember what I actually set it to, but so I can mess with the color spectrum, the lighting, intensity, and that sort of thing. And I like that because I want to hang it above the plants. I don't want the lights to hang down in front of them. And I want it to kind of light up the most of the tank with an emphasis. Now, if we look at the placement of the lights, the emphasis will be on where the plants actually are. Now, I thought about planting over here as well, but we're not getting a ton of light, so I kind of want to have white sand everywhere, which will almost bury the rocks. and then the plants in behind. The plants will, of course, come out eventually and just kind of take over this entire aquarium. But for now, I want to have a bit of a controlled environment in the back because I'm not going to be able to be maintaining this tank properly. This has to be next to zero maintenance, meaning I don't want to have to get into, and that's the only way I'm going to be able to do it, is get into a 700-gallon aquarium, step all through it, get to the back, dunk my head underwater, unless I'm doing a massive water change, and start pruning and trimming plants. So considering the scape was incredibly important, but so was the actual plant selection. I got to make sure I'm picking plants that are going to suit my needs. So I pulled this log out slightly so we can kind of get an idea of what's going on back there. And if you look, like right there, if we stop focusing on the dirty glass that I haven't cleaned, you can kind of see it. That's an Ecotech, a Vortec L1, which I think does about 3,000 gallons per hour. Now, because I want to do CO2 injection, I don't think a sump's going to be a great idea because a lot of times you can just gas off all that CO2. Although there are things that you can do to combat that, and I believe in an upcoming build, we might be plumbing a bunch of tanks together that I build and in CO2 injection and on a sump, or we'll see. We'll give this time. Anyways, all the electrical, the hoses and everything, where'd they go? They're up in there. On the other side of this wall, which I've got to clean up, is where the electrical's coming through and the hose that I can connect the pump to. I still have to put clamps on it, of course, and connect it to the actual filter. But, you know, right now I'm not really focused on that. The filter we're going to use is the canister that's currently on the 2,000-gallon aquarium. This is a Ultima Bio Filter 2000, I believe. So it's good for up to 2,000 gallons, or maybe 1,000 or 2,000. I can't remember. I've had it for 5 years. The problem with that is that it doesn't work very well, and there's something wrong with the bypass. But I was thinking, you know, what else can you not see right now? I was thinking we have a couple of options. I could give up and just build something else, or I just fix it. So I'm going to shut that down and simply fix it and then hook it up to the 700. It's quiet, it works. I can do inline CO2, inline heater if I wanted to. Lots of options with canister filters type of deal. And it's definitely going to support that tank. When that filter comes off of there, we're looking at other options. Other options I'm already working on. I hate ruining videos. Surprises. I can't keep it. I'm the type that's like, okay, full disclosure. And I know that I'm always dropping hints and like leaving you guys on cliffhangers and stuff. And it's just a personality trait. Let's put it that way. So if you're in my house around Christmas or your birthday, I am definitely the type. The lighting out here is so bad. Oh, there, I look like a normal human being. I'm the type that I'm the type that says, when your birthday's coming up and I got you a present or something, a week or 2 weeks or days before your birthday or the day before, I will hound you. Want your birthday present? Do you want it now? Do you want to get it early? Do you want your birthday present? And you know you shouldn't, but you kind of do want it, and I just can't stop. I can't help but ruin every surprise. Okay, so what did we get at the... I haven't figured the lighting out here yet, so I know that it's probably harsh and it looks horrible, but I still got to hang lights and stuff. Bear with me, the focus is definitely on that 700. Let's start with substrate. I got 500 pounds of it. I'm not bringing it, we're going to go to that. I'm not bringing it over here. So the substrate that I'm going with is my favorite, one of my favorite soils anyway. Can you even see it? It's by Tropica. Mind you, it's become one of the cheaper planted tank substrates, but it works really, really well. I've always had success with this. I got 4 bags of the soil and then the soil powder. So this is just a finer grain. Not that fine, but I don't know if you can even see it, but it's not that big of a difference. I like to use, anyways, they only had, my local fish store, 1 fish to 2 fish in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, only had 4 bags of this and 1 bag of this, and I just needed 100 pounds of the planted substrate because that is going in behind the rocks. And I need a couple of inches, 2 to 3 inches of this planted tank substrate, which of course is going to probably overflow a little bit and whatnot, but you only want to use the expensive substrate where the plants are actually intended to grow. Everywhere else, save some money and get pool filter sand. It's about 50 cents a pound. I could only find it in 20-pound bags, and I got 20 of them. So 400 pounds of this. If I don't use it all, trust me, I've got other ideas and other tanks we need it for. And then 100 pounds of the planted tank substrate, which should be enough. We're gonna find out. Okay, a couple things that like have nothing to do with the planted tank, but this is equally as important and definitely should talk about it. When I first started the gallery, I think I had 40 fish nets, 4 different nets, or 3 different nets, something like that, for each individual tank. And over time, these things grow legs and they run out of here. I don't know where all my nets are, so I did need to restock on a bunch of different size nets. If there's not enough for every aquarium, I'll have to order some online. I don't like wiping out my local fish store of all their nets. So I think I just got like 2 of each size. Reason for so many nets is simple. This net goes in one tank and it goes in no other aquarium. What's the point of that? Cross-contamination. None of these tanks, every fish out here has been properly quarantined for up to 6 weeks. So no real worry about cross-contamination in terms of like pathogens or parasites. But what about like snails or something? I did have snails in the 2,000-gallon aquarium. I don't know how they got in there, but then they started getting in every other aquarium. Why? Because I was running low on nets, I was using the same equipment on every tank, and then I started transporting or transmitting these snails to every fish tank. So in my experience, and if I were to give you any advice about fish nets, try to have a couple different sizes for each tank. I know it's going to get expensive, but it just ensures no cross-contamination at all, regardless of how healthy your tanks are. You never know. And I've never really had to deal with cross-contamination out here. Just once I gave my one of my tanks ick, which we were able to treat, and I was grateful for actually getting it because I could finally do a video on how to treat it, plus stress the importance of cross-contamination. Then this net here, it's got a fine mesh, which is going to allow me to remove detritus and uneaten food from the arowana tank, as well as the rays if it ever builds up. And then it extends quite long. I break these all the time, so usually got to get them. As for supplements, I'm not going to really need a lot of that. But I do like to pick up a few. I bought all these, and this is probably the one that I'm most used to, which is like the Flourish line by Seachem. Good stuff. I use it for a lot of planted tanks, and I'm not going to need half of this. However, we do need some macro elements and macronutrients within that tank. And we have the 4 main macro elements that we're going to require. This is just all grouped up. We'll need carbon, so CO2. We can add that easily. It's all going to come down to how much those plants need, and they're probably not going to need a lot of carbon, plus good lights. But adding in some form of carbon is definitely always going to be a good idea. So everything here is everything I need just in case. 700-gallon tank with this tiny little bottle. This is just in case the plants start to show signs of deficiencies, I can add in what it needs and then go pick up something bigger. Because I am on a well. The only thing that I ever have to worry about is really adding potassium and iron, because I'm on a well and most of the other elements, including arsenic, is in my water. Not a lot of it, but it is there. When I bought this house, I had to get the water tested. We're also going to need nitrogen, but the fish are going to provide the nitrogen for the most part. But if they don't, and for probably a month while we let the plants establish, we'll have to artificially add it. And phosphate, but my tap water is filled with phosphate. Then, of course, some of the micro elements, so manganese, iron, and some trace elements. Mostly all of that's in my tap water for the most part, but iron is not. So, of course, got some iron. Mostly everything your fish are going to actually produce, especially if you have a heavily stocked aquarium, but the things that they don't produce that you are going to want to add, iron and potassium. I don't know if I bought any potassium, but those are the 2 things that I'm probably going to have to add to my tank. This stuff is boring. It bores the hell out of me. I don't know if it bores you or not. Let's move on to plants. I'm also an absolute huge fan of tissue culture plants. Now, when I go to the local fish store, they might not have the ones that I specifically am looking for. So I order online. Sometimes when I order online, if I need 10 or 20 of something, sometimes they only have like 5 or 6 in stock, so I've got to go to a few different places. Yeah, I go tissue culture, and you guys know why. Tissue culture for a simple reason. no snails, no algae, no pests or pathogens of any type. They're tissue culture plants and they grow ridiculously fast. Downside is they're just tiny little plants. We'll take a closer look here in a second. So I ordered most of the plants from one place and, well, pretty much half from the other place. One of the places showed up today. The other place is delayed because of this massive storm we're getting again. I think we just had two. Like, come on, Canada. So this storm is delaying it likely until next week, which is going to pose two problems. One, freezing temperatures and being frozen for maybe potentially that long, like almost a week delayed. They might show up dead. No problem. You just read their DOA policy or their survival rate policy or whatever it is. I'm not too worried about that. My problem is what about all the plants that showed up already that are sitting in their cups waiting? We could put them in the fridge to prolong their life, and that could take a week or two, but maybe that doesn't work that well. I didn't want to risk half the plants for the other half and end up with nothing. So I went to my local fish store and bought as many as they had of the types that I was looking for. Now, what did I get? I'm gonna have to classify it, we'll add these up. There's not a lot of each type, but what we did get, these are all runner plants. We don't need to clip them, we don't need to trim them. Perfect. This is a 700-gallon tank, front to back, it's 5 feet. I am not looking to get in that tank every week or every other day or every other week and do any trimmings and replantings or anything like that. Now, it's unfortunate that when the other plants do arrive, we might do a massive water change on the 700 if the plants arrive alive, and we'll add them in too, which is just going to be an absurd amount of plants. Oh, I didn't know I got those. Oh, I know what happened here now. The plants that aren't getting here on time would have filled in these two, because I'm pretty sure anyways, the theme here is there's technically only 4 different plants. There's technically supposed to be 6 different. We can figure things. This is enough for now. We're focusing on runner plants. We've got Crypticorn and we have Sagittaria. I'll come up a little closer. So this is Crypticorn Undulator Red. I'm not too excited about red, but they do get quite large, sort of. But these, those juices. These are an absolutely beautiful, beautiful aquarium plant. That, I'm going to plant it in its substrate, and that's going to be it. Now these guys do get relatively big. They'll grow to about 6 inches tall, and they are, they do grow off a rosette. So in order to propagate, you can cut them in half, but they'll likely spread on their own. Look how beautiful this is. It's already gorgeous. Isn't that gorgeous? I get a little too excited over fish and plants. I need help. We've got some Crypticorn Lucens. I'll look for a good one. Some of these don't look that great. This, I have experience with this one. It will probably get maybe that big, but it's going to send out runners. And runners are like, its roots grow out and then a plant comes up through it and it just goes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You could tactically start with this and then eventually coat your entire aquarium with it. Super easy to grow. The lighter green plants are always usually easier to grow. Again, I'm not looking for incredibly difficult plants. I'm not trying to make this a difficult process or anything like that. Okay, so this says it grows 15 centimeters tall in 30 days, which is about 6 inches in 30 days. Which one did we just open? Yeah, that's another Crypticorn Lucens. This is that one. Now this one is Sagittaria. What the heck is it called? Subulata? I don't know what that says. But you can even see in the picture here, it sends off runners. Give you an idea of, oh, this one's big already. Oh damn, that's a lot of plant for that little cup, isn't it? Downside is these tend to be pretty expensive. But open it up. Look, it's actually quite large. And we're gonna cut it. And now I plant that by itself. And I still have this. So I'll get 3-4 plants out of this. And that's kind of what you'd want to do. You want to give yourself as much of a chance as you can with growing them. You can cut them. I tend to tear them apart because I'm impatient. And I would space them every 2 to 3 inches. Within a month, they're going to be touching. It's just going to be this big grass field. I shouldn't have done that. I'm not ready to plant. I probably just wasted that. Great idea, Joey. You always have great ideas. Oh, that's what we already looked at, the Crypticorn Undulator Red. We looked at the Lucens. We looked at that one. Did we look at the Lucens? Yeah, I think that's it. Oh, the Crypticorn Undulator, or however you pronounce that. This is another runner plant. Again, this is like a zero maintenance planted tank. I'll have to do water changes when needed, but that's going to be it. I hate how they package these. This one's going to grow pretty big as well. Mind you, these are tiny little plants, and they cost me like $12 to $15 each. They're not cheap. They're going to be guaranteed healthy, pest-free though, and they grow. They just do. Some of them will be dead in the container though, and that bothers me. But a lot of that is like if air or oxygen got in. Anyways, that's it. I gotta get to work planting this. So all these plants in the 700, that's not a lot, but it's enough to give us a good start. And I can't wait to see what this is going to look like. Isn't this absolutely gorgeous? I'm going to be able to, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this tonight. That's why I'm going to have to end this video. I need another Red Bull and, you know, maybe change my shirt because I'm sweating. I get so excited over this. I just start sweating. Oh, okay. The plan here with the substrate is simple. I'm going to start off by adding likely a thin layer of pool filtration sand in behind the rocks. This is just to ensure I fill up any cracks underneath the trees because I don't want the planted tank substrate going under there. It's also going to be kind of difficult with all this wood here that I just had to add in just to have a look, which is fine. I could rearrange it and whatnot, and odds are I will once we get to a substrate in there because it could look abundantly different and I might not like it. But once we add in a thin layer of sand, we'll then cover it in the soil. Likely have to fill the tank up by 3 or 4 inches just to soak the soil, and then we can put in the plants. All the rest of the pool filtration on the outside. No. So light dusting of pool filtration sand, then 2 to 3 inches of soil, and then more filtration sand on top of it so that it all looks the same. Yeah. Anyways, I'll get to that in the next video. If you guys want to see this and join the journey of the 700, I highly suggest you subscribe if you're not already, or you will miss it. I'll also admit that while I am excited about the 700, the other stuff that I'm doing, kind of more exciting, but we'll get to that in a future video.